Okay, welcome everyone to this 12th Bioregional Open Dialogue in the R3.0 Open Dialogue series. And this focus is on biohubs. Biohubs nourish bioregional metabolism. You'll appreciate that play on words in a moment. I'm Bill Bowie, and I'm Senior Director with R3.0, Redesign for Resilience and Regeneration. And I'm hosting this solo today. Our Managing Director, Ralph Thurm, will join us next time. But we're really excited to have Eva Gladek and Serena Joury from Metabolic. There's the play on words, joining us to present on their new white paper on the idea of biohubs, and to be joined by Thais Corral from the Sinal do Vale biohub in Brazil to present an actual example, a case example, if you will, of a biohub. So we'll jump into this shortly, but I just want to do a little bit of background first. So here's our agenda, pretty straightforward, our standard agenda, which is, the welcome and engagement guidance and a bit of context setting. Then we'll go over to Eva and Serena for them to present on the white paper, on the Biohubs white paper, then to Thais to give a background on a specific biohub, and then we're going to open it up to facilitated open dialogue amongst you all. And then we'll have a short closing where I'll share some of the upcoming developments and events that R3.0 is involved in. So that's what we'll be doing today. On engagement guidance, this is just our standard, what we share, pretty straightforward. But again, if you could stay on mute, that would be great. If you can have your camera on, that's great, particularly in the question and answer dialogue section, but totally understood if you can't. Please add your questions into the sidebar as it's going, so that we'll be able to sort of review those as they occur. I'll be able to kind of maybe cluster them together. I often will voice the questions for efficiency, but sometimes I'll ask you to go off mute and voice it yourself. But if that does happen, just please respect everyone by keeping your questions succinct. Stay on topic. So, don't use this as an opportunity to tell us a bunch of stuff about your own work, unless that's a very specific part of your question. And of course, be respectful. No attacks of people's integrity in here. That just would lead to an ejection, but we've never had that problem. We also have a place for, so the sidebar is really for the questions. If you have comments or resource links, we have an Open Dialogues Google document. I'll share the link to that shortly after I go off of the screen share. And this does two things. One, it prevents distractions in the sidebar during the section, but it also means that it's publicly accessible ongoingly. So, people go back to these resource documents for past dialogues all the time. If you want to be associated with your contribution, just please remember to add your name to your contribution if you want to be identified. And then finally, we record all of our sessions and we post them publicly on our Open Dialogues landing page. And again, I'll share the link to that after I go off of my screen share. So just a bit of background information on the Open Dialogues, Bioregional Open Dialogue. So we started the R3.0 Open Dialogue process organically at the beginning of 2024. I just posted something on LinkedIn, a link to a scientific study, and somebody, in fact, it might be somebody who I saw join this call, said, hey, doesn't it make sense for us to talk about this? So they asked if R 3.0 could host a session on it. And we said, sure, glad to do so. And so that started the process of our open dialogues. And we did two sessions in early in 2024 that were sort of pre-sessions. We hadn't fully devoted this series to bioregionalism in 2024, but then starting in 2025, we've focused them all on bioregionalism, and I'm just showing some of the sessions that we've had up until now. I'm not going to go into those in detail, but you can find links to all of these, the recording, the deck, and the resources document on our Open Dialogues landing page. So that's sort of the background information that you need for this. I'm going to hand it over to Eva and Serena in just with a slight amount of background context, which is that they reached out to me, among many other folks, a while ago for input on this white paper on Biohubs. And I was very glad to provide my perspective. And I love seeing all of the other key players who've given their perspectives. And I appreciate that Metabolic really did that kind of outreach to do the interviews, and then also did an incredible amount of outreach, as you'll see, or research on the state of play of Biohubs right now. And then they also reached out with a review copy of the paper, which I gave some feedback on, and they really gracefully took that into account. And so they just released this paper like a week or two ago, I think, at the Katapult Future Fest. And so this is really one of the first opportunities to, have an in-depth dialogue outside of that Katapult context. And so we're really excited and thankful to Eva and Serena for joining us. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to stop my slide share, and I'm going to hand it over to Eva and Serena to take it from here with a sort of deep dive-ish into their white paper. So Eva, Serena.
Thank you so much, Bill, for that awesome introduction. And Thais, her Biohub Sinal do Vale is one of the profiled biohubs in the paper. Can you all see my screen now? I'm also trying to make sure that I can see you all as well as possible.
We can.
Wonderful. So I'm going to kick off with a little bit of context and introduction about the paper, and then I'm going to hand over to Serena, who was the lead researcher on this paper and actually stewarded many of the conversations. As Bill was saying, we started this work around a year and a half ago. When my friend Nico Brenes Michelson approached with the idea, he and I had been talking for many years about joining forces on doing a land project. And he said, actually, why don't we write this paper on biohubs? And we involved also Amy and Annalise, who are co-authors in this work. And it took a year and a half. Actually, we thought it would be a much faster process. But in the end, we realized when we started wading into the field how complex it was, how many layers there are. There's a bioregioning space as a whole, which has been evolving, emerging, growing massively. But then there's also the many different projects that are land-based, have various focal points and ways of existing. And so it took us a while to get our bearings about what we thought we had the mandate to put forward as a proposal into the field. And we see this as a continuation of a dialogue. So what a great way to kick this off with a broader community. And so thank you so much, Bill, for allowing us to present this here shortly after we launched officially at Katapult Future Fest. So the paper is called Biohubs, A Pathway to Regional Resilience, and it's really focused on physical hubs, so brick and mortar projects specifically. That's one of our filtering criteria, and Serena will talk more about why, but not just any physical project. These are specifically designed with an outward focus, and they're designed to catalyze bioregional transition efforts in various ways. And The key thing that we are looking at is a particular hypothesis for how to make these things investable, replicable, really create them, make sure that they are something that is not on the margins of our society, but rather become a central focal point of how we're imagining the future. So why this work and why now? I think all of us here are aware of the fact that we are facing a number of different converging crises globally, and it seems like things are only getting worse, from geopolitical tensions to the resource and climate impacts that we're all experiencing. And also, very notably, exponential AI and what that's going to do to the workforce. In fact, there's very little investment, it feels like, in the real economy. Everything is, there's so much money that's being pulled into financial instruments and speculative actions. And it feels like we need some real strong counterpoles to create actual real economy initiatives, physical places, physical efforts to regenerate landscapes, to bring together communities. And we believe that actually an antidote to this extremely challenging, some call it a polycrisis situation, is really a return to places. And obviously that's a core thesis of the bioregioning movement, to look at the places that bring us together on foundations of shared cultural and cultural history, as well as ecology. So I don't think that this is, we don't need to dwell on this, but the idea, of course, is that by creating these pockets of resilience across different communities, we can reweave these broken relationships and start to create a kind of layer, a new foundation of a different economy that we can step into collectively. And for a long time, I think we held this hypothesis of physical initiatives actually being a really interesting focal point. And that's partly because Metabolic, as an organization, one of our first kind of forays, we're about to turn 14 in 2 days, but in our first year, we got involved in this demonstration site in Amsterdam North, where we got access to a polluted plot of land, where we could apply a bioremediation strategy. And actually, it's a thriving community now that's been there for many years. And we saw how potent it was to build these deep demonstrators, these really physical initiatives that are exemplary. So we were very attracted to this idea of biohubs as a physical entry point to supporting, catalyzing, or otherwise engaging and acting with the bioregioning space. Now, one of the first things that we identified in our research is that there is this persistent resourcing problem of the entire bioregioning space. There's a lot of dependency on grant funding. And we thought that perhaps, and so this is our central hypothesis that actually shaped through the process of the writing, that biohubs, if they're designed in a deliberate way, where they generate layered value across multiple scales, that they can be financially resilient enterprises in themselves, but also through the design of non-extractive business models that really put value back into communities, center community ownership, prosperity, and power redistribution, can become vehicles for regional transition. And so we actually put forward a hypothesis in this paper, which we'll share in a moment as Serena goes through the research, for how to potentially do this. And we're really very much looking for people's feedback for testing of these ideas, for taking them forward, advancing them, et cetera. So this is also an invitation to see how this work can advance. Serena, over to you.
Great, thanks. Hi everyone, my name is Serena Joury. I just realized I didn't participate in sharing where I'm from. I am currently calling in from Amsterdam, but I'm from Jordan, and I love seeing how international this crew is. And for this section of the presentation, I'll be diving into what we learned from the research that we did for this paper. We spoke to over 30 people, and that spans practitioners of biohubs, financiers, supporting organizations from adjacent fields, and we also built a repository of over 150 initiatives. And so from that research deep dive, we've distilled it into some highlights that I'll share with you today. So, with the Biohubs research, we applied 3 filtering criteria. Eva touched on this at the start of the presentation, because there are actually very few initiatives. If you were to Google this from your desk, if you were to Google Biohubs, there would be very few initiatives that show up on a desk research that specifically use this particular term to describe their work. And so there are many other words that are used in this space, from regenerative farms to climate innovation hubs to living labs. And in order to actually be able to cast a wide net, but still have some type of directive orientation in our research, we had three filtering criteria. The first one is physical sites, because we were specifically interested in looking at what kind of value and resources can be unlocked with the use of physical infrastructure. Also, the initiatives that we researched had an outward facing orientation that was quite explicit. So not only were they demonstrating sustainability on site, but they were also dedicated to some type of systems change within the broader systems in the regions that they're embedded in. And they acted as a node across multiple domains of work or other physical nodes in the region where they exist. And we found that this is a growing and thriving field. There were 154 initiatives that we found. We scanned thousands of sites, and this is the kind of global spread of the different initiatives that we surfaced across 44 countries. And we went in depth on 11 case studies that some we spoke with and others we researched from our discs. So on the next one. We've, from the people that we spoke with, and that spans practitioners of biohubs like Thais, who is joining us today, but also financiers, enabling organizations, and such, we distilled a set of patterns with regards to the successes that people find in their work, what really enables a breakthrough in the work, and also frictions. And this is a smattering of what we found. What we have in the paper is a lot more detailed, and I'll cherry pick today. So one of the interesting things that really stood out for me as we were distilling these insights and writing was about how long-term commitment and rootedness in place was showing up in our research. So from the repository, over a third of the initiatives predate the 2000s, and several practitioners actually cited about a 5-year threshold that recurs before results become consistent in demonstrating actual regenerative capacity development in a region. And that can look like, for example, the producers that you're working with actually changing the practices for their production and such. So another thing that I also find very interesting is that several of the initiatives, over half of them are either bootstrapped from bringing together, pooling together different types of resources or grants, or completely founder funded at the seed stage, which really highlighted the importance of founders absorbing early risk or even sometimes at personal sacrifice in this field. And I think that's all I'll talk about in this slide because there's more to dig into. In terms of recurring frictions, the primary challenge that we found actually is regarding finance, and that can sound a little bit contradictory with regards to our general thesis that these physical hubs and physical infrastructure can unlock resourcing, but it was actually a bit more nuanced with regards to the conversations that we had. We found that there's a lot of potential in these initiatives, but that value is actually largely latent because there are a lot of practitioners who are working on financing pathways and improvising them and starting from scratch wherever they are. So there aren't enough replicable models that can be patterned across the field. And also there are different types of financial and value sequencing logics that this type of typology of work would benefit from, and that's something that we actually dedicated the latter half of the paper to exploring. So we'll dig into that in the remainder of the presentation. But we also surfaced legal mismatches. A lot of hubs are stretching the boundaries of what their typology of work is legally recognized to be. One practitioner said that, they run a farm, but it's stretching the boundary of what a farm can be. So that becomes a challenge. And also hubs cited the challenges around measurement framework, stitching together many different types and also navigating various cultural, political divides in the region that they're working with. And so that is a summary on that front. And then we dug into looking into how we can design these hubs so that they can actually be systemic, so they can actually contribute to lasting systemic change. This is based on the conversations that we had with people, but also a deep dive into a literature analysis that we did into adjacent social and environmental movements that had demonstrated demonstrated systemic impact, considering that this particular typology of work is relatively nascent or emerging. And we rooted this design framework in a cooking analogy that I'll be digging into very briefly today. And when we put on that hat of acting as chefs that had the agency to combine different ingredients to create a hub and explore different ways of working with ingredients, we first wanted to align on the actual intention or orientation for what hubs can do in a region. And those came to four critical outcomes. The first is actually strengthening basic provisioning systems around food, energy, water, and housing that communities rely on. The second is reviving social cohesion and cultural vitality, either through human capability development or inner development and inner work. The third is ecological regeneration and stewardship, so actually restoring degraded land. And the fourth is economic resilience, and that includes holistic value circulating and driving holistic value circulation in the bioregion that they're embedded in. Next. So in this cooking metaphor, and from our research, we distilled 7 ingredients that can be combined and recombined. We found that many of the initiatives in our repository start with 2 ingredients and then broaden, but more than half operate across 7 or 6 or 7 of the ingredients and these domains, spanning land and ecology, food and material flows, knowledge and learning, culture and social fabric, governance, finance and enterprise, and human and health and inner development. Then next. This is a schematic that we were experimenting with for quite some time to explore how these different ingredients can be layered or chosen from, if you were to act like it was a menu or a pantry for you to pick from. Next. And then in terms of ways of working with these ingredients, we ended up patterning that into 3 ways of working, which are build, cultivate, and connect. And this was what was most directly derived from the literature analysis that we did into adjacent environmental and social movements that had demonstrated lasting effects, systemic effects. And it's quite straightforward in terms of build, what the hub physically constructs and operates on site, cultivates what it develops in people and relationships, and connects how it links outwards into wider systems. And the idea is that you can take each one of these ingredients and work it through this framework of thinking about on the front of land and ecology. What are you building? What are you cultivating? And what are you connecting? And how does that look across the entire spectrum of the multi-domain work that you're involved in? So with that, now that we've spoken about what these hubs look like, their spread, patterns of successes and frictions, ingredients and ways of working with them, we'll now dig into ways of financing these hubs. And I'll pass it back to Eva.
Thank you so much, Serena. So, of course, as Serena pointed out, one of the consistent frictions that we found with almost every single initiative at one point or other, though there are some that are actually quite financially successful, which was a clue to say, actually, you can build these things in a way that is both values aligned and commercially effective. The main sticking point kept being financing. How do you actually bring in the funding across different parts of the life cycle of these hubs to make them, to originate them, to actually get them to a place where they're operating and where they're potentially generating enough surplus to support bioregioning activities? Now, I know that there are lots of questions in this field about whether or not that's possible. Can you really generate a surplus? And also there's a lot of concerns around, can you approach something with a commercial mindset that is fundamentally not extractive, that is really holding the kind of idea that we are bringing in capital and investment of different types, or funding that can also be philanthropic funding, with the intention of creating value that is then mostly going back into the communities, the region, et cetera. And that was really the question that we set out to explore. And what we have actually, we started with this fundamental premise that we observed from the research, which is that we believe that there's all of this latent value that is actually sitting within these regions, within these efforts. So for example, the first premise is that there is a lot of untapped potential that if you put the ingredients together in the right way, you can start to create value in ways that can be translated to these initiatives. So that often in regions there are pieces of land that are degraded or polluted, or assets that are underutilized, places where, for example, industries have left buildings or brownfields, that these things represent unrealized potential. But there's also populations of people who are very capable and very passionate and not really able to plug into systems in the appropriate ways. And by creating the right types of structures, you can actually combine these things in a way that generates more value collectively as for the entire group. I'm not going to dwell on these other two premises. They're described in the paper, but the fact that commercial doesn't mean by definition extractive, that you can create different models that have fail safes, et cetera. And that also this fundamentally has to be a blended finance exercise, that you're having to match the different types of capital, whether it's philanthropic or return seeking in different places, and making sure that that's actually allocated in the right way so that you're avoiding the trap of extractiveness and that you're actually able to tap into these different forms of latent potential. Now, the way that we also thought about this was that you can, alongside these different ingredients for a hub, design a multi-level value model. And this is a schematic that sort of represents that. So at the fundamental core, you have the physical hub, which has all sorts of ways in which it's creating value in the world. And some of those examples of different business models that can apply at the level of the site itself are hospitality, education, housing, materials management or processing, manufacturing, energy generation, research, et cetera. Then the idea is that at the landscape level, what this starts to open up is different types of engagements where, as you become a trusted actor in a place, you can potentially connect up farms that otherwise wouldn't be, let's say, speaking with a particular offtake actor, but you can bring them together into a cooperative, or you can help, let's say, create food hubs that bring together food from across different production facilities and do shared investments in processing facilities or retail facilities, et cetera. And these are just examples. It's basically what happens at that kind of level of aggregation once you're able to coordinate between different actors. That opens up another layer. And then finally, at the region, this is where there's more, let's say, speculative and experimental instruments that lots of people are really working hard on further developing, but it's a lot of outcomes-based finance. So, for example, we have some friends who are working on initiatives that look at structurally reducing fire risk in certain regions. And insurance companies currently are counting on the fact that if a major fire happens, they're going to have to pay $2,000 per hectare. But actually, by investing now in certain measures to remove underbrush, they can actually structurally reduce that risk of it happening and also reduce the cost of recovery. And the difference in that price is something that can then potentially be paid to an actor who is facilitating or coordinating that work. But there's a lot to be done here. Now, our hypothesis is that if you are really acting across these three layers, and that has to be properly sequenced, you can really start to activate a lot of value in a coherent stack where there's some things that are actually generating value across each of these layers that starts to create a surplus that really fundamentally allows you to do this regenerative work while also running an actual well-functioning business. So this is the basic approach. And one of the things that I'm actually not going to go through these because I already talked through them. But these are the three layers that I just talked through. I think the fundamental thing, though, is that by creating a kind of common language to be able to say, like, oh, well, we're building a biohub and it has these types of ways of acting or being, we are hoping to create a legibility for investors and for the practitioners to be able to communicate what they're doing in a way that's maybe more straightforward. And also for practitioners currently to be able to look at projects and say, like, actually, maybe there's some interesting ideas for how to enhance the way that we're currently acting across these different layers. This is our hope, but it's basically also an invitation to further develop, further explore. And we really see this as Bill already said, There were so many people who contributed to this paper, including many people on this call. I see Felix de Rosen here, who spent a lot of great time providing us with feedback. There's many others who did the same, and we're really grateful. So we see this as a collective output. And with that, I am going to pass to Thais, who's going to inspire us with an amazing one of the case studies. Thank you. Let me stop sharing 1 second.
Great. Thank you so much, Eva and Serena. That's a really great introduction to the broad concept of biohubs and the the background research that you've done. Thank you so much, and I encourage people to check out the white paper in its entirety. There's no way that a short introduction like this could do full justice to the paper, but thank you for that introduction. And so now, as they suggested, Thais Corral from the Sinal do Vale Biohub will present on one of the case examples that is spotlighted in the paper, and also one of the biohubs that has been around and really kind of established this concept to begin with. So I am going to pull up the slides and share those while Thais walks us through the work that they are doing there. So here we go, and go into slideshow mode, and there we go. I'll go on to the next page. There we go. Thais, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Bill. And also it was so nice to have this presentation before by Eva and Serena. I think that the work you have done of pulling together and creating like the patterns and the standards and the challenges and creating a harmonization, as Eva said, about the language in which you talk about these things, I think helps a lot, because we need narratives, that we need the new narratives, and especially today that there are so many things around, and I see people get confused about what is what. So I have to have that label or that brand of Biohub is very important. I discovered that concept, that as a concept, not long ago, like 2 years ago, because we didn't we couldn't identify with an NGO, an enterprise or social enterprise. Where are we? Because we are this systemic place-based catalyzer and enabler and an initiator of what was needed or what we had opportunities to do, no? When I was the founder 20 years ago, because I was looking for creating an example, no? I was very inspired by an example I saw in 2010 before, I was already, there was something that I was willing to do, and I got inspired by a project in Egypt called Seken, because which meant to be like an expression, an implementation of sustainable development. I come from the generation that did the Rio 92 and all these very wonderful integrative concepts that to manifest is another layer, much more complicated and complex. So when I saw that, I said, this is what I would like to dedicate the rest of my life to do. And that's the origin of Sinal do Vale. I started purchasing land in a very, I would say, one of the very, very degraded areas around Rio de Janeiro. Rio de Janeiro is the second city, biggest city of Brazil, was where the Portuguese came, the royal family of Portugal established. So a lot of colonial development somehow happened at that time. And one of the places was this farm, which was a coffee farm, and during the colony in the 1800s and 1900s. And then it became, it went on cycles of degradation, of extractivism and degradation with charcoal and then cattle. And finally, it came to be a truly abandoned area, no, and with no infrastructure, in spite of the fact of being one of the areas that provides water. There has a big watershed, many rivers, and provides the water for Rio and a lot of environmental ecosystem services, no, to about 14 million people, no. So we call it a UN flagship biohub because the UN Decade for Ecosystem Restoration is based on this strategy of the flagships, and one of these flagship is Mata Atlântica. Mata Atlântica is one of the most biodiverse biomes of the world, and the people that have been to Brazil and to Rio know what I'm talking about, you know, and it's incredible, like with very little time that you take out people and extractivist activities, you can kind of let this incredible nature come with so much biodiversity, all kinds of new animals and species. So it's really inspired to see the power of nature. No, Mata Atlântica shows us that it's like it's coast and tropical, no, both, but it goes through all the coasts of Brazil. But we are in one of the parts of the Mata Atlântica that is known to have more biodiversity, you know, because it's really in this tropical zone. So next slide. So we are located near Rio, no, and the idea of Sinal was never to be like a local, like only a local project. We always had that idea of having a place where people could have immersions and activate action globally in all the big challenges we have today. And over the years, we have.
Did anyone else lose audio?
Yeah, Thais, we can't
Yes,
hear you.
we've
Cut
lost
out.
audio.
What
You
happened?
cut out. Oh, there we go. Are you back?
I am here, yes.
Great. Okay, we just lost your sound for about 10 or 15 seconds.
Okay, so I was just talking about this slide, you know, like Sinal is a local example, but it always had a global reach, you know, and it's written there. And we are about 15 kilometers from Rio. Can you hear me now? Is it okay? Okay,
Yes.
let's
Yep.
go.
Yep.
Next
We're
one.
fine. Yep. We're good.
Go ahead, the next slide.
Okay.
So this is our theory of change, you know, the three circles, the Biohub, that is an incubator of several activities and also of a catalyzer of people, of resources. Our area of experiment is a bioregion, and our field of engagement is a regenerative bioeconomy. And so this was how, in a very simple way, we can explain how we work and what we do. Next. So this is our bioregion, you know, it's about 200,000 hectares, and Sinal is 200 hectares, and this is the area where we are, no, this buffer zone between Rio de Janeiro, which is one of the tips here, and the mountains, the chain of mountains of Serra do Mar. Next. Here is our vision. No, go ahead, Bill. Yeah, we want to show, to pioneer. No, yeah. Is it?
I'm sorry. Go ahead. That was my fault.
Yeah, to pioneer a place-based ecosystem model for a regenerative society. And Sinal do Vale, our idea is to revive cultural landscape, natural landscapes, but also to kind of activate agency. Always the one of the focus of Sinal was leadership. So that's why it's very important for us to integrate people in everything we do, all types of people, local people, international people, so to do this mix in which they hold together a work that is part of this example. Next. This is our team. You can go, so you can see that our team also is very diverse. Like you have people of different education, different backgrounds, different gender, different. This actually creates for us a living experiment of what we face in the world in terms. And I always say that is the work, the focus on the common work, on the results that we can achieve together, what helped to overcome so many of the edges and the divides that you see that in other settings are impossible to surpass. No? Next. So what we do, we have bioeconomies initiatives, like we prototype and scale initiatives and business models in the fields of bioregional regeneration. We do integral education. Right now, we have just started a school for regeneration, especially to create, to build capacity for something that is very important in our region. But we also have integral education of learning journeys with universities, with very different type of institutions, which we customize always something that is meaningful for them. And a Center for Regenerative Convenience. Next. This is our bioeconomy initiatives. This is like how we work now. The bioeconomy initiatives, we have regenerative tourism, regenerative supply chains, local food systems, and restoration. So the regenerative tourism, you can go after the regenerative tourism. Go. Can you go, Bill? Yes, it's this 110 kilometers trail that we created. We did the trail. It's like connects like the whole bioregion, and this was a way to really contact all sorts of lands, the different landscapes, the different. I would say we have 9 sessions, the different also phases of history that are manifested in this territory. So we have 110 kilometers, 5 cities, 11 protected areas, and 3 now are more regeneration centers. But the idea is that, and we could make this trail also a public policy, which is something very difficult that we succeed in 3 years. And so this has given us also a lot of legitimacy in the area. Next. So our number, we have our at the trail. These are numbers at the trail. Is 250 leaders, 1,500 visitors, 150 farmers, 10 entrepreneurships. We planted more than 200 trees, but mostly in lands of Sinal, and biodiversity monitoring, and the fact that we transformed that trail in a public policy, which is something very, very rare that you can do that in such a short period. Next. This is the regenerative supply chains. This is something that we really have been investing in creating in our area because it's you need infrastructure. This is an area that has been very underserved in infrastructure. The farmers cannot really access finance. So by connecting to other companies and supply chains, we can kind of help both ends, but both ends that if it was not by the Biohub, they would never meet, they would never be able to collaborate. And we have with this Italian company, which is a company that produces natural medical products, and Aboca has been, and we are working with next. We are working with a landless movement area which is producing acerola and guaranato products, but also restoring the forests while they do these products for Aboca. No? So has been a very innovative way of restoring land, and this is something we are willing to do more and more in this territory, because we have properties that and everyone is willing to, of course, generate some income. And if you don't do that, there is a lot of pressure right now for real estate development. No, so how can you compete with real estate development? I think just the small markets are not have not stability, do not give to the farmers the necessary stability to prevent other type of activities.
Oh, we just
that are there hanging. Next. Yeah, this is Aboca, just for you to see more or less. This is acerola. This is the plant. Next. This is another economic solution this one you developed at Sinal, is to use the green jackfruit, which is very abundant in the area. It was brought here to feed the slaves, and we developed the gastronomy and also the way of managing it, the processing it. And we are right now willing to, we have done we have been working with that for 10 years already. And of course, we don't have still a big market, because this is a niche market, even though the jackfruit has the same texture of meat, because it's in the markets in the United States. But here, people still are not so fun of it, because it's also is considered a food for poor people. No, status is connected to the consumption of meat in Brazil, but we are right now working with the public purchases, and we hope that we'll be able to overcome it. Next. This is Madre Frutos. We employ mainly women that wouldn't be able to work because they are single mothers. And but the fact that the jack is a seasonal product, they can adapt to it, and many times they also bring their children to Sinal. So it has been, in many aspects, very positive. Next. Yeah, the Florestas do Amanhã, what we have been doing is to show in Sinal how you can restore even very, very difficult areas, no? Because in Brazil, we have a legislation that say that you have to restore, you have a liability. You need to restore tops of mountains and also very steep slopes. And we did at Sinal all the 200 hectares of Sinal are restored, but specifically these areas were particularly difficult, and we did with money from the government, public money, and it was really, really difficult. But you start this particular action 4 years ago, and now we have most of our slopes and top of mountains restored. Can you pass it and then we show it? Go on. Yeah, you see the areas that this was at the beginning, these 3 areas. So it's about 50 hectares, and we also certified them with on carbon. So we are going to be able to buy these credits. And if you want to buy our credits, it's you are going to help that restoration that is truly an example. It looks much better than that. That was the beginning, but now it looks much better. But it was, can you see, like it was restoring like a stone, And you see in most of Mata Atlântica, you see is like this, no? It has patches of forest, but a lot of areas, very complex, that are naked, no? That have been deforested. Next. The integral education, which is something very important for Sinal, because we kind of, you have this systemic view of how you bring restoration economy, like people of different backgrounds, how this all, and different initiatives that are also entrepreneurial. So we have the ecosystem restoration school, which is very important for the local people here, that they see also that restoration they can be part of restoration, find jobs in that part, especially here. People kind of just go to work in Rio, no, because we are 50 kilometers away, and don't see that the work that can be in this area, no. We have learning journeys, which are very important to show people, all these different aspects and what a biohub can do in a bioregion. You come here a week and you're going to see a lot, and have really an immersion of, I would say, an immersion of hope, because if we did it, many people can do. No, it's something that I really truly believe that is how we are going to. I think it's one of the proof possibilities of overcoming the big crises and the challenges we have. And the volunteer and the residency program, whenever was here, we were talking about that, how much we would like to have also people that are already professionals and wouldn't come, because most of our volunteers are young people, that are people just out of college. And residencies are more professionals looking for a transition in their careers and looking for a place where they could inspire, where they could find a community of inquiry, about what do I do? Even if I am concerned, what do I do? Shall I keep just complaining or feeling that the world doesn't have a place for me, or there is really a place where I can find people, like-minded people, where I could join efforts and do something that I feel that I can feel that I am behind, and I feel that there is a meaning for me and for the world. So this is a little bit what we are designing right now. Next. The center, this is, we have since the beginning, Sinal was started as a retreat, and now we have we have a infrastructure for facilities for meetings. So we have hold a lot of convenience and the regenerative and network activation. In more and more, we want to focus on organizations that really are in their path to a more regenerative perspective, pro purpose. We have the Guardians of Land, which is a network that was started here at Sinal, but now is all over Latin America, of women that are that are owners, but also guardians of land. Some of them are indigenous people. And we have a network that we started 10 years ago in Latin America that is called Activating Regeneration, that we meet every year or and we kind of reinforce each other. It's like our Sangha, And so next. Yeah, I'm going to go quickly about this. This is more, you can go on our website and see the photos and all that. Next. Yeah, this is our impact, 200 hectares, 16,000 of carbon capture. I think it's to 20,000. I made a mistake. We have to correct. We have 110 meters of a trail that has been publicly recognized. We have about 1,500 visitors to the trail. We have mapped it, and we have we have a network of 210 farmers. We have planted about 100,000 trees. You have several demonstrations. You have 4,000 volunteers from all over the world. We have had many retreats. We have a theory of change. So this is more or less a quickly overview of our impact, and then next. That's it, and I'm sorry because I gave the slides on Canva, and I think they were a little distorted. So I should send you the version on PPT so you can put, so people, when you send it, you put in your website, they are in a big form. But I just want to say that many of the conclusions that the Metabolic has reached, I agree. We still need to be recognized as an important agent of our times. And but I think, Victor Hugo used that quote, there's nothing more important than an idea when time has come. I mean, you need a scale that is feasible, and you need different people working together. It's impossible to do that in another way. And the only way to cultivate really the capacity and the way to work together, I think, is in a biohub. I've seen this, over the years. I experiment this. Even for me, it was. I had no idea of this would turn out, but this was clearly one of the main learnings I had. That if you put people in a scale where they can kind of go through the different processes, but also have results together, we can achieve incredible things, and it's not just about money, because really we have never had a lot of money. Since the beginning, it was like juggling with here and there, and still we did a lot, as you could see. So
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Thais, and thank you to all three presenters, Eva, Serena, Thais. Let's just take a moment to let this sink in, because this has been really a wealth of information, and I find that it can be helpful if we just pause before we jump into the dialogue segment, and just let that sink in with appreciation. Well, I would love to spend longer with some appreciation, but I do know we've got a finite amount of time here. And I did see a couple of questions coming in from Bronwyn, really valued colleague from Australia. And in fact, Bronwyn introduced me to a colleague of hers, Anissa Madden, who is now at the University of Vermont, and we're working together on a in-person bioregional event later this week. So Bronwyn, thank you for that. Bronwyn, you had questions both for the metabolic team and for Thais. Are you able to go off mute and voice those, or do you want me to voice them?
No, thanks so much, Bill, and it's lovely to see you. And what a fantastic triple presentation. I think I can combine them, because I asked the metabolic presentation sort of with the layers of finance. While it was very intuitive, in practice I was wondering how you insulate yourself from competitive pressures at the first layer, because it's project-based finance in a sense, and in those fields you've got incumbents and competitors, and just the sheer expertise and energy needed to create that layer felt overwhelming. So a lot of people say, oh, let's just do layers 2 and 3. But then Thais went and presented this incredible array of all 3 layers. And I sort of see how she did it, but that's why my other question to her was, if you weave together all these finance sources, do you get like real tension? I mean, obviously you get tensions of time and energy, but I mean actually institutional confusion, like somebody won't give you a grant because you've also got some sort of funding that looks more like startup capital, or I just wondered if you could talk about any tensions and what level of expertise you need to handle those. But thank you so much.
Great, thanks, Bronwyn. So maybe Eva and Serena first pass on the sort of the general sense of this, and then Thais with a more specific example or answer. Eva and Serena, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Bill, and thanks so much for the question, Bronwyn. To be honest, the thing is that yes, absolutely, the layer one business model approach it is challenging. Yeah, you actually need to have a I think that's one of the things that we were also noticing and calling out is that within the movement, there are so many passionate people who are bootstrapping things and doing what they can. And I think that having a kind of structured approach where you also bring in expertise, maybe from adjacent partners, or team up with people who have certain business experience, can help create that foundational layer in a sequence that then creates a good basis for building from there. But at the same time, tapping into those other layers immediately opens up more pathways of value than if you're just an average, let's say, hospitality actor, because you're also creating value across the whole scope of things that the hospitality actor will not be looking at. And so that's the kind of thing that we have a hypothesis around. We think that if you can team up in the right ways, that you can start to really magnify the total capital that becomes available. And part of what the recommendation that we made was, if you do not have that expertise in running a restaurant or building a hospitality business, then there are lots of actors out there who really want to do things that they think are meaningful. We've had tons of people over the years of operating Metabolic say, like, I've been a lawyer for 10 years and I don't want to do this anymore. I want to actually or not in this way, and I want to team up with a kind of purpose that's focused on regenerating the planet, etc. So I think that there's that pathway. And something else I wanted to mention is that this gray area of, are you a business or are you a nonprofit? That is exactly where the multi-structure, you have to, in the end, I think, create multiple structures that allow you to accept different types of capital and sequence that. And that's one of the things that can allow you to tap into this blended resource access. But I'm really curious to hear your experience with that too, Thais, because I actually was recently, toward the end of writing the paper, I got to visit Sinal de Vale, and it was a wonderful experience. And Thais, I think you also have multiple entities, right? And from what I understood.
Yeah. Yes, we do. And I think
we lost your audio again, Thais.
Oh, back. Now we can hear you. Yep.
You can?
We can hear you now.
Okay. And yes, I think we have multiple structures. Now we have an NGO, and we have, I would say multiple, and we have a company for mother frutos, and we probably are creating also a cooperative. So I think we need, but I feel that the most important is to say that the overall the group, like the business sector creates the group with multiple brands, and within a brand, within an umbrella, the Biohub is the umbrella, because also that they have to somehow support each other. No, in practice, they can coexist and exist because they have a common structure, which is the Biohub, and is the place, which I think is also something very important. No, it's something that I also experienced and saw in the example of Sequen. No, they have even a university connected to the setup of Sequen, no? The Sequen group, but the Sequen group, they don't call themselves a Biohub, but they are a Biohub. They started 45, 50 years ago, but I think this has proven to be the only way to exercise all these functions, no? That somehow in the world have different requirements.
Great. Thank you very much, Thais. And I see, before I go on to the next question, I just have to voice a mea culpa here. So the slides were the anomalies on the slides were totally my fault. They were not Thais. She sent me a clean copy. I, prepared it for displaying, and those anomalies, I didn't see them beforehand. So, Thais, I'm very sorry. They will definitely.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I think the importance it was to come across with the message. It's not important, but when you when you send it to the
when
put
we
in your
post it,
website, it's nice that they are like that they are like in the best form possible.
That we will make sure on that. So
Okay.
I see that. So we've got a question from Megan in the sidebar, and then we've got a hand up from Stephen. So Megan, I think yours came in first. Do you want to go off mute and voice that, or shall I voice it?
Sure. Yes, I can voice it. No, it's so wonderful, Thais. And my question is really like kind of more of an experiential question. You described how you saw what was happening in Sikkim in Egypt and, sort of had the vision and came back and acquired the land and so forth. But I'd just love to hear a little bit more about what your process was like of just making that practical start when it involves reaching out to so many people and following so many different threads and ideas. Maybe you could just talk a little bit more about those early days and what your experience was. Thank you.
Well, it's not, I was not, I had started before Second. I had started 20 years ago, and I was in Second a few years after I had started, no buying the land and all that. But it was just after being so much in the global arena, no, of the, especially of the UN conference for Environment and Development, the Rio Conference in '92, all that process, and following at the '90s that we had all these global conferences on many issues, and a lot of great ideas and frameworks, no, to be implemented. Is that following just that process with the government institutions, but also with big players? I had seen what I had seen after like 15 years was I was appalled for the little that really happened on the ground. And my question was why, because there were so many concerned people, and I came across two very simple answers, no? Is that we sometimes, when you are in projects that are very far or that you establish the timing of the project, the time that you are able to give to the project. And most of this process, they require, when you enter, you kind of have to surrender to the process that need to emerge and how you're going to heal yourself, heal the process, kind of mobilize see the people that are going to go along with you. So there is this time is much more a kairos time than a chronos time. No, and most of us, that come from the West, say I have 2 years to accomplish this and this and that, and nothing happens, and you leave anyway, and it just goes back to what it was at zero, because I saw many projects just disappear completely, And the second thing is because I really love nature, and I wanted to be I would like to do something that I took care of a place and a land using everything that I have learned, and that what turned me into embracing a place, and I have to see that after 20 years, what we got to. The results we had here are much more tangible than what I did just 30 years before I came here. Just being in a lot of meetings, negotiating, and even working with governments, and very little stayed. And I think it's because of that commitment of staying there, of having a hold. That's why I really believe in agency, guardians, and in place-based, and second was just a tangible example of something that had started much earlier,
Great. Thank you so much, Thais. And so we've got a question or a hand raised from Stephen, and then we've got a question from Carrie in the sidebar. So let's go over to Stephen next, and then Carrie, if we can queue you up. And I assume you'll be able to go off mute and voice it yourself, but just let me know in the sidebar if you want me to voice it. So Stephen, over to you first.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, everyone. This is a really great presentation. I really appreciate it. This is maybe more a question for Metabolic, and it's kind of US focused where I am. These type of projects tend to have a lot of goodwill, ambition, and sometimes some land, but not a lot of additional capital. Particularly with, you know, the more structures you built in, if there's like going to be private investment plus philanthropic capital, there's the transaction costs can be like quite high with legal and accounting and everything. My question is, because I've been looking at this in a few circumstances where there's a lot of people willing to, you know, provide their time and expertise, and they come from different like kind of quadrants, different service providers. So you might have legal, you might have you might have some substantive people who are going to work on the property and be leadership. Have you all seen any kind of structures that incorporate how you capture that contributed value and then compensate that value, let's say on future type of future value through, I mean, I know it can be done through cooperative and commons type structures, but I'm really curious about like specific instances where that's been made to work and how it's done. So if it's a little too specific a question, but I'd love to get any insights on that. And I looked at the report. The report looks great, and it's like it has some of that in there, I see.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. I think you know, the report and the repository have a lot of different the 154 examples, and those are to some extent explained, and you can also scan through them on the website. There are no standard approaches for this, and I think a lot of the things that you've already mentioned can be mechanisms that are used. You know, obviously there's cooperative structures, there's association structures, there's assets that you can create, like trusts that are shared. You can create contractual approaches, and I think we are also, building our own biohub, and we have done some land-based projects in both Europe and the US, where we've experimented with some different types of models. And I think as we all collectively learn, I hope we can create like a database and also really case studies of what is actually most effective in these different types of contexts. And I don't know, that doesn't feel like a very satisfying answer, but I don't know whether this is something that you'd want to continue in dialogue outside of this context too.
Yeah, for sure. And I have a project I'm kind of addressing these right now, a couple of them actually. So yeah, trying to figure out, particularly this point about contributing now and then getting value back, which could be monetary or other types of value back later.
Yeah, and that's in standard business practice. That's usually done through shares, right? And you can do that through shares, except that has certain types of implications. And I mean, really very happy to continue having that conversation, because we've tested out through different steward ownership approaches, also ways that you can do long-term value return or so yeah, happy to.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you.
Hey, Stephen's in my neck of the woods, so I can connect you two if you can't connect directly. So thank you for making that offer, Eva. So we have a question from Carrie next. So Carrie, over to you for your question.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say what a marvelous contribution to the field that this report is. I can't wait to dig in, and thank you, Bill, for hosting this timely presentation. I don't know how well formulated my question is, and I'm sorry I can't be on the camera, but I guess, you know, one of the things I have long been frustrated by is, for example, the best analogy is like the Sustainable Development Goals, right? Who would have known, certainly not me, that they were designed with a very systemic lens? Because they've always seemed very siloed to me. And so, this is not a judgment, but it's just a curiosity. When I look at the Biohub site slide that you created and showed earlier in the presentation, I see all these categories of food and material flows, knowledge and learning, et cetera. And they all make perfect sense. And I'm just wondering, this is a yearning I think all of us have, is how do we look at this through a more integrated lens and assess the possibility for the mutual benefit of each of these categories to one another, and that they can't necessarily be separated out in a given context. So I don't know that anybody's figured this out. I'm just posing the question to see what experiments you might have conducted in your research. Thank you.
Great. So this one's, I think, first at least over to Eva and Serena, and Thais may have thoughts. Before you start answering, I'm just going to say I see one more question from Basma in the sidebar, and then a comment from Tariq. Let's take the question from Basma after we do this round, and then I think that might be our last question. We'll do some closing stuff. So just, sorry, a little housekeeping before handing it over to the two of you, Eva and Serena first.
So first off, I want to thank Carrie for your question because I feel very seen. This is one of the challenges that I faced, or we faced, while we were drafting the graphics for the paper. But this specific infographic was one that Eva's smirking because I sat with for many days. Tweaking, and I split it into layers at some point, and we workshopped that, and then trying to figure out like how to visualize the interdependencies across these activities that happen in physical places, in brick and mortar projects, and visualizing that in a cohesive way while not siloing them or making the boundaries seem too neat was a challenge. And it's something that I'm still chewing on, because I know that, I mean, we have published the assets and the visual infographics. Actually, they're in the paper, and we're going to be updating the website so that you can take a look at those infographics as separate assets and check them out. But it's something that I'll continue chewing on. One thing that I found was a major unlock actually in this work. I noticed some people also commenting on the graphic language. We worked with an artist who physically printed out pictures of her bioregion and actually used physical thread to weave through them. And I think that's something that gets lost sometimes when we translate really complex ideas into digital infographics that should be like easy to digest and translate very quickly, is that you lose that sense of tangibility and sense of touch that can really help with creating something maybe a bit more interactive. And so that's food for thought for me, but I just wanted to share, Carrie, an appreciation to your question. And I don't have a clear enough answer, but I'm thinking about it.
Mhm.
Great, thanks for that humility, Serena. Eva or Thais, any comments on that, or should we move on to the next question?
Yeah, let's do the next question because it's already, we have
we're getting
6
close.
minutes.
Yeah, so Basma, are you able to go off mute? Yeah, there we go.
Sure. No, thank you everyone for this incredible presentation and contribution to the field. My question was about the coordination of all this work that a Biohub takes on, especially the node role. I can imagine it's pretty difficult to maintain coherence across actors. And that's assuming, a biohub is able to achieve coherence in the first place. So I won't say much more than that. We're very early days with our bioregional activation efforts in Jordan. We've just launched our hub in the Design School for Regenerating Earth. So this is very timely for us.
Great, thank you. But there is, you did, pose it as a question in the sidebar, at least, of how Biohubs coordinate, maintain coherence across activities and actors? So that's a question that I think either the metabolic team or Thais or both could answer real
Yes, thanks, Bill.
remaining time.
Yeah, I can answer that because, of course, this is my daily life, you know, and what I have been through all these years, and I think it requires a lot of active listening, even though we have to move, you know, because it's not that we have the time to listen and we have the time for action. It's all together, but I think it's very important for the one that assumes or undertake this role, or for the ones that undertake these roles, to know that there will be a lot of activation of all human virtues. Patience, like compassion, like understanding, effort. You know, like for me, it was really an exercise of the noble truths and the virtues of humankind. Because but that's the only way that you can somehow create something where people trust, you know, because otherwise it's very difficult, because we have to build coherence in a world that is totally incoherent. So, in many sides, people have also these perceptions, no, of bad experiences that they had in the past, and so everybody comes with the doubt that it's not going to function, it's not what you are presenting to. So how do you change that mindset, or how do we change that mindset together? So it's over time and going step by step. That's why the time element is very important. It can't be fast, you know, because you have to take the time to really integrate all the pieces that have been disintegrated over time, you know, that have been apart. So it's truly is a work that requires a lot of love, you know. Otherwise, if you are only in your head, you run away, because it's scary many times. No, you don't see. You seem that you are not going anywhere.
Great, thank you, Thais. Eva and Serena, any last words on this before we close out?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you all for the attention, the time, the request for continuing this conversation. I think we're all learning in this space together. We're part of many different, we're working on a couple of in various ways on bioregional initiatives. One, our kind of main engagement is in the United States and Southern Appalachia right now, but supporting some others. And I think so much is variable in context, and I think as we learn from each other's context, that's the part that I'm very excited to continue doing with all of you. I want to pass to Serena and Bill before, as you close out, if you don't mind, I'll share my screen with just like the gratitude page from the paper, because I just wanted to make sure that some of the names of people who contributed were also put up.
Sounds great. Serena, did you have something to add before she displays that?
I just wanted to say thank you so much, everyone, for holding space for this dialogue today. And this paper has really felt like a culmination of many different perspectives, expertise, efforts over the past over a year and a half now. But for Metabolic and for my own personal journey, it feels like just the start. We're starting to look for our first biohub in Europe, and hopefully that's designed to be one of many. So it feels very live in my work and in my personal life. And if anyone would like to connect and chat further about any of the things that we talked about today, I would welcome a conversation. So thank you.
Great, thanks so much. So Eva, if you want to show that, and I recognize we're at the bottom of the hour, so if people do need to drop off, of course, I'll stay on for a little while and just do a couple of closing slides. But again, thanks to our presenters today, and thanks to all of you. So Eva, over to you with this gratitude page.
I don't even necessarily need to say so much. I just wanted to just point out that in terms of the very involved folks, the people who really spent time reviewing, and the practitioners, researchers, et cetera, who we interviewed, some of their names are here. Maybe it's just a quick kind of thank you so that some of you can see who was involved. And that's all I wanted to really just pop up there, because I noticed that it was after the intro slide to Sinal, and that I handed over to Thais before we were able to share. I'll pull it off now, Bill, so you can do your last slides.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again to Eva, Serena, Thais, and to all of you. Really great questions today. So I'm just going to share a couple of slides that will close things out. Let's go over to slideshow. So just a reminder that these we have a landing page for our open dialogues on bioregioning that will add the materials for this session, the recording, the deck with the corrected slides and the living resources document into that, and I'll share these links in a moment in the chat. Oh, actually, here we go. I'll just throw those in there now. I can multitask. The next thing to mention is just that we do have our conference coming up in September, the 8th through the 10th. There's a link to the conference in what I just posted. So this is our second annual conference of 13. Going forward from 2025, we're focusing on bioregionalism. So bioregional regeneration as collapse resilience, earth-centric biocultural kinship knowledge and governance is the name of the conference, and it's online, but it's accompanied by these parallel in-person bioregional confluences. And so the audience at this point is primarily that confluencing audience. And so we have, I think as of today, 74 registrations for bioregional confluences. These are bioregional groups of varying different sizes who will gather in person to participate in the conference and to reflect on the conference content with one another in reflection sessions each day, but then also internally, we're not taking up the entire day, so the in-person confluences can also do their own bioregional work internal to their bioregion. And so we're still taking expressions of interest. 70 surpasses the 50 that we had last year, and we imagine that number will keep going up. So the registration form is in the sidebar if you'd like to join or share that with others. We integrated starting after the conference. We integrated these monthly confluencing community calls. So we have everyone who gathered last year was about 350 individuals. Now we're up to, I think, 400 or more in the confluencing community, and that will be increasing as more and more confluences join. So we have a monthly call where we spotlight one bioregion. And so we're particularly, last month we spotlighted the Serra do Mar bioregion in Brazil with Danilo Olivas and Samara Tanaka. Next month, or this month, excuse me, in just a couple of days, next week, we will have the June confluencing community call, in which we will spotlight Magdalena, who I saw on the call. I don't know if she's still on the call, but she will be presenting on the Pampas bioregion in Uruguay. And we'll also have Emmanuel and Megan from Story Moss, who are our media partners for the conference, and in particular for documenting the work of the confluencing community. And Emmanuel and Megan were on the call today. So you'll be able to hear from them if you join the confluencing community. Many of you already are in that, but if you join before next week, you'll get information on that call. And there will continue to be monthly calls up until the conference and thereafter. Finally, we have a confluencing fund. So we have a goal of 50,000. Last year we had 21,000 that we basically just shared in equal amounts based on size with the confluencing with the confluences. So that was money that we had in the bank, if you will, from Lankelly Chase. That money, was used up, and so we're reconstituting the confluencing fund. And just recently, Kinship Earth Executive Director Sid Griffith informed us of a contribution to the confluencing fund, so that gets us a little closer to our $50,000 goal. And so we at R3.0 will be serving as a flow funder. So we will be flowing these funds directly to the confluences. And so we welcome others to support that confluencing fund going forward. And I think that's it. So thank you, everyone. Another really great open dialogue, and we'll share this information again on our website and on social media. Thanks again to Eva, Serena, and Thais, and to all of you. And we'll see you next month. We're still in discussion about what the open dialogue next month will be. Emmanuel and Megan are playing a key role in doing some networking with a potential presenter for next one. So stay tuned for more information on that. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Thais.